Alright, hey guys, I wanted to talk to you today about player scouting and just in general what that even means. Some difficulties with it. So, very beginning, difficulties with it. It ties in with stats, but we don't have any stats. We don't have any, true, out of game scouting methods besides just watching footage and collecting it like a slave. So, getting information on players is actually really difficult, and a lot of it is opinion based. So, you'd ask someone, hey, what do you think of this person and how they play? And they might just give you, oh, I think they play pretty good. I think they play this hero pretty good. Do we know the numbers on it? A lot of the times not. So I think Winston Labs has a good amount of numbers, and then Owl had a leaked thing. They had a leak stat page that ended up being too much information. They pulled that back. Now we just get this garbage one that's playtime, amount of healing, amount of damage, deaths, kills, and that's it. There's nothing even more to that. Even though we know, because we've seen the stats before, that they have more, and then they even have even more behind the scenes, but we just never get to see that. So difficulty scouting. How do you compare players? You have to just set aside lots of time of just watching tournament VODs and then kind of just assuming where people are sometimes, because it's also there's no replays to watch back. If we had replays, I would just sit and watch the best players in the world all day long, and I'd watch their first person, and then I'd watch third person of teams making rotations, making plays, and that would be so good because I could make content around that. It would be really easy to do so because I would have the tournament thing, the client, with the ability to use it, with the ability to scout people, see what they do. But as of right now, we just don't really have that. So scouting is just painfully difficult to do. Again, even collecting numbers for your own players. If you have players and you have a team, you're looking to see what they're doing wrong. You can't do that. The thing that I've seen the most, and I mean it's very obvious why this is a thing for player scouting, is carry bias. So a team could literally be put together of this person, you take 6 players from each different team, they were all the carries and the best players on their team. Now, that necessarily doesn't mean that they're the best players for this new team, because the problem that a lot of teams have is you need the balance. You need more supportive elements, you need some carry elements, you need a shot calling element, and if the players don't mix in that sense, then it doesn't matter if you have good players because they're going to just not work as a unit. So I'm trying to think of an example. I don't know if I can think of one off the top of my head, but I think would maybe be just taking the best player from every team that you would think that was good. So every NA contenders team, you just pick the best player off each team and then you just put it in one new team. Potentially that team might not actually work together because their style might be, we have 4 players playing megally aggressive all the time, and the thing that enabled them to do that on their older teams was they had 1 or 2 players on those teams that would play aggressive, and there would be 1 or 2 players playing passively, and using that space that the other 2 were making to hit headshots, get kills, have the ability to heal more often, have the tank line play more passively and be more peel orientated. So that it's really hard to see because you don't have the numbers for it. So it's basically just in your head. You're just this guy's getting all the kills, this guy's popping off, this guy's the best player, we need this best player, which I'd say, yes, if we don't have the numbers, I guess that is a good gauge, but the problem is sometimes that's not even the case, where that cleanup player that's actually making use of a lot of the room isn't actually the hard carry player, and then sometimes he gets put in that hard carry role on another team where they're expecting him to hard carry, make a lot of room on his own. And that's probably not the fact. The fact might be his teammates on that other team got a ton of deaths because they were making a ton of room for him, and he didn't get many deaths, and he got a lot of the resources, so he got a lot of the healing, nanos. And then you take another team where you're okay, we're going to play more passive with our tank and supports, and they're going to split the resources more evenly. Can you carry at the same level? I'd say that player is not going to be able to do that, and they actually might potentially look worse in that team because the system wasn't set up for them to be that carry. So it's hard to really get a good understanding of players when we don't have the numbers, when it's really hard to look at role compositions, because each team is can be very distinctly different. Tanks can play completely different, and you could say one tank looks more aggressive, gets more kills, he should be the player that we need in this team, and that's not the case. I think maybe the best case is I'm thinking of like two starkly different styles is Mono and Jonas. For MIXL, they were one of the best defensive teams in the entire league, and they abused that all day long. They kited all day long with their tanks. Mano did do aggressive dives, but the problem was Janus's style was flank all the time. Go for ridiculous flanks, act like a tracer that's in a monkey. Don't care about peeling for your team as much, play much more self-centered, go for backline, get a lot of pressure, and that's what happened with that team. But they weren't used to playing around that style, so I think they had a lesser win rate with him, and they only played him on specific map types because of that style that he had. And some might say, okay, Mano's just the better tank. Mano's maybe the better tank for this team, but I think they actually struggled near the end because they didn't have enough aggressive players on their team. I think they forced Libero into that role. Whenever they didn't have Pine in, they actually lacked it a bit. So I think they had a balance with him being in the team because then they had a lot of flexibility. And then I think removing him is actually the wrong decision. Maybe not going with him in the future, maybe using him in the same way they're using him before, or getting another DPS player to make that transition so that they don't have to change the core up really that much. So I think if you were to compare the two, Mano and Janus, I don't think you could compare them evenly and say whatever team Mano is on is going to be better than the team Janus is on. I think it's very distinct, their differences, their styles, and I think comparing them to basically evenly and saying that like they're the same like caliber of player, they do this like the same things, it's not fair to say because they offer many different things and they play very differently from one another. So it's hard to like look at them and say this player is better than the other one because they just do things differently and they succeed in different ways, where I think that's what teams should be looking more so for, like basically getting the balance right rather than looking at the skill, because once you get up to like the higher end, I think the skill between like three players that you're looking at is not going to mean as much as getting that distinct style that you need, finding the players that you need that will fit your composition, that will fit your style, and I think that's what really should have the most focus whenever players are like looking to get scouted.